Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2172. Be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in Califon, New Jersey. Interesting little story about that city's name, but maybe we'll bring that up in our talk today with a very special guest by the name of Dennis Kazmarowski. His friends call him Dennis Kaz. Dennis, welcome to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
Oh, absolutely, Mark. Ready.
You've released a lot of clutches in your life, and we're going to be talking about your life, the fun you've had, but also about a very special build. But before I give you a proper introduction and we dive into that, what's maybe one little thing people don't know about you, Dennis?
Well, a lot of people, I've done a lot of builds in my life, Mark, and a lot of people say, oh my God, you must have such a big garage and a big shop. And it's, quite frankly, it's just a 2-car garage behind my house. And most important thing is I just have a lot of friends that help.
Well, that's pretty cool. And the great thing about the car world, the car hobby, racing world, is everybody's friends. I raced vintage cars for a long time, and I was shocked that when I would have trouble at a track and need a part, just jump on a bike or a pit bike and ride around and say, I'm looking for a clutch for a 67 sports racer. Anybody got one? Yeah, I've got one here. You can borrow it, and it's a great world that we live in, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an exceptional community, and even from the big people all the way down. So it's just exceptional.
It is real fun. So let me give you a proper introduction. Dennis Kazmarowski, and again, his friends call him Dennis Kaz, started racing way back in 1974 in his early 20s. And a few years later, he won the Mid-Atlantic Race Series. Nice job. He's raced everything from FV, FF, GT1 Corvette, GTP, and Camel Lights. That's cool. WSC Series, and many others. His racing days overlapped with cars that he's modified and built from scratch, as he mentioned, in that garage behind his house. His builds have been featured in a multitude of magazines, including Road and Track, Sports Car International, Corvette Quarterly, Porsche Panorama, and VW Porsche magazines. He also maintains a collection for a private collector that includes post-war through modern cars. And at 75 years old, I think that's a young 75, he's still having fun in his garage with a latest project, which we're going to learn about today, a complete build-out of a vintage 1958 Le Mans Coupe designed by Strother MacMinn. We'll be back in just a minute, but first a word from our sponsors. They keep the fuel in our gas tanks. We'll be right back. I love Covercraft's new 5-layer all-climate cover. It was developed and engineered for anything Mother Nature can throw our way. It's very soft, breathable, and easy to store, and pampers your paint and interior surfaces, providing maximum UV, rain, dust, and snow protection. Add their gust guards for windy conditions for extra protection. Their 5-layer all-climate cover is custom-tailored with Covercraft's attention to detail, form and fit with a quality and attention that's been their standard since 1965. Covercraft protects cars, trucks, motorcycles, RVs, trailers, and watercraft too. Every one of my vehicles is protected by a Covercraft cover. And I have a deal for you. Use the code YEAH21 at covercraft.com and you'll get 10% off your Covercraft order plus free shipping. That's right, 10% off and free shipping. Just type in the word YEAH, Y-E-A-H, 21 at checkout, YEAH21 at covercraft.com. Covercraft, protecting the things that move you. Most people don't think about their collector car insurance until their annual premium becomes due. Well, why wait and see if there are better options for your beloved rides? I didn't. Did you know if you change carriers before your policy runs out, your insurance company has to refund you the unearned portion of your policy premium? I did my homework, I shopped around, and I found American Collectors Insurance. They've been protecting collector vehicles since 1976. I encourage you to call my friends at American Collectors Insurance. Ask them about their agreed value policy. And if your collector vehicle is on your regular auto policy, you will be shocked at the savings, not to mention the assurance, should something bad happen to your ride, that you'll get what your vehicle is actually worth. Give them a call today for a quote at 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866 888-224-9324. Tell them you're a friend of Mark Green at Cars Yeah, American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. Automotive enthusiasts just like you and me. That's American Collectors Insurance. Give them a call today. Auto Geek's Blackfire SiO2 Spray Sealant. It's a spray-on, wipe-off sealant that's quick, safe, and easy to clean and protect your vehicles. I love using it on all my cars. Auto Geek's Blackfire SiO2 Spray Sealant is a spray-on, wipe-away sealant that uses SiO2 ingredients to provide a slick, brilliant, and long-lasting shine. Silicon dioxide is known to be one of the most effective ingredients in car care products, and Blackfire Spray Sealant takes advantage of every stunning feature it has to offer. This sealant will protect your paint from road film, dirt, and other common contaminants while providing an impeccable, long-lasting, hydrophobic surface that forces water to sheet and bead on your paint for months. Go to autogeek.net to get yours and for the best product selections on the internet today, along with their skilled technical support. Autogeek.net is where I go for all my detailing needs. That's autogeek.net. Check them out today. So, Dennis, we are back. We're going to dive a little deeper into the corner. This world around racing goes way back to 1974. Now, when I say the words 1974, it doesn't feel like that long ago because I was in high school and I'm like, wait a minute, that was a little ways back. I must be getting a little old. How did you first get into this world of racing?
Well, obviously, my dad and my brother and I always went down. We grew up in Maryland, and we went down the Marlboro Raceway. And in those days, in the 60s, you could watch Donahue and Penske and Walt Hanskin and Herb Wettinson and all the greats that were running Trans Am and Parnelli Jones and AJ Foyt. They would come to these little tracks, and these were all part of the Trans Am series. And we would go down there and we would watch, the nationals and the regionals. And Marlboro was pretty much of an innovative type of track, and they had the winter nationals that they used to call it, and they would have the refrigerator cup, which you would run literally in the middle of winter time. And they also had the Marlboro 6 Hour, and the Marlboro 6 Hour was actually guys like Jackie Stewart raced a Lotus at the Marlboro Cup and the 6 Hours, and it was a lot of fun. It was a track that was very, very active in the D.C. region. So, I got bitten by this early, and as soon as I could afford a race car, I, bought myself and built a Formula V and went on from there. So it was fun. Absolutely fun.
Yeah, starting Formula V, I started vintage racing in a Formula Junior, a Lotus 18, and the Formula V guys was a very large group in our group, which I ran with Sovereign. I mean, it was like a whole bunch of bumblebees just buzzing all around the track. And I thought, those guys, while they weren't going as fast as the faster cars, and I wasn't really either, I was lumped in with the Formula Fords, which were faster than me. But the Formula V guys looked like they were having fun. So that's a great way to start. But you progressed rather rapidly up into some serious cars. I mean, racing Corvettes, GTP, and Camel Lights. So this progression, how did that happen?
Well, in our personal business, we started doing better and better, and it's obviously you meet more and more people. And the Camel Light car was a Porsche Camel Light car built by a Fab Car. There was only 2 of them ever made, and it was the kind of car that was an introduction to the Camel Lights. It was maybe not the front runner, but it was a very competitive car. And, when you meet a lot of people, a friend of mine, Peter Dahl, owned a race shop, and also he built race engines for Porsches. And I said, Peter, I'm going to buy a Camel Light car. I said, I'm going to buy a Fab Car. I said, you do the engine, I own the car, and we'll go racing.
Nice.
That's exactly what we did. And we ran it for a couple of years, and we had a lot of fun. I mean, we had a blast. Absolute blast. We, there were memories that I hope will never be erased, and Peter remains such a good friend of mine today.
How fun. Now, were you building cars just for yourself throughout all this time period? Because you mentioned another business that was doing well. What was that business that enabled you to play with race cars and go out and race? But were you also building cars for other people?
No, not really. My wife and I were in the ski clothing business, and we've been in that all our lives. Now, we spent 45 years there in the ski clothing business, and we represented as reps. We had territories, and we represented some of the finest and the best ski clothing companies in the world. And it grew and grew and grew, and we took on some other reps and so on and so forth. And then after a while, after 45 years in that business, it was enough. We knew our accounts weren't accounts of ours anymore. They were all close friends. And it got to the point where we not only knew our accounts' kids, but we started knowing the accounts' kids. And I turned to Kara one day and said, "We're just getting too old for this to lug all these big bags around and stuff like that and set up at shows and so on." So we just retired, but it was a great ride, just a great ride.
I think back when I was in junior high and high school, I skied a lot. It was part of our ski club we had in our high school. And I think of ski clothes, the first name that comes to mind, which was really cool in the 70s, was Rafi. Did you ever manage that?
No, we didn't. But we carried a company called Head Ski Wear, which you would know. I mean, Head Tennis and Ski Wear, and those were the days they were owned by AMF, and AMF in the days ran commercials on ABC Water Sports and ESPN and so on and so forth. And they ran commercials. We make weekends. And they owned Harley Davidson. They owned Hatteras Yachts. They owned Sunfish Sailboats. They owned Ski Tennis, Ski Wear, and Head Skis as well. And it was a great company, just a great company. We left them after, I think 25 years, and went on to work for a company called CB Sports. And that back east here was almost a cult. It was everybody was wearing a CB jacket. Thank God.
Yeah.
And it was great. As I said before, Mark, it was a great ride, and we couldn't have done it any better.
Yeah, how
and
fun.
Had more fun.
Well, a mutual acquaintance of ours, who's been a past guest here, Jeffrey Hacker, who is known for finding some very unique and wild, crazy cars, called me and said, "Mark, there's a car being built by a guy named Dennis that you need to talk to him about and bring forefront." And you know how he gets so excited about these things. So let's talk about what you're doing here. It's a 1958. Now, that was a great year because that was the year I was born. A Mans Coupe designed by Strother MacMinn. Tell us about this car, why it's important, and why you chose this to rebuild this thing.
Well, I'm glad we got some time because I was on the phone with Jeff, and Jeff's a good friend of mine. And I'm telling you, Jeffrey he is truly the automotive archaeologist.
Yes.
This guy knows where all the bodies are buried. I'm telling you right now, he's just incredible. And we were having a conversation, and he said to me, "Dennis, in all the cars that you've done, what car would you really like to own?" I said, "Jeff, I would love to own the car that was on the cover of Road and Track in 1960. And they started making these in 57 and 58, the Mans Coupe." He says, "Well, you can't have that one." I said, "Okay, well, thanks." And he said that car was absolutely destroyed, went over the hill, the Malibu Canyon, and it broke up into like 300-400 pieces. And he says it was never rebuilt, just thrown in the garbage, and that was it. However, I do know where a body is. I said, "Oh, come on, Jeff. Of course not."
He does know where all the bodies are, doesn't he?
He says, "No, I know where there's a body out in California. It's been sitting outside for 60 years. I said, "Give me the guy's number." He said he gave me the guy's number, and I called the gentleman. Great guy, absolutely great guy. And we were talking, and I said to him, "Are you ever going to finish this car?" "I've had it 25 years. And I said, "What are you going to do with it?" And he says, "I'm going to take it to Bonneville." He says, "That's what my goal is." I said, "Well, I said, "How old are you?" He said, 65. I said, "Well, if you've owned it for 25 years and you want to take it to Bonneville and you're 65, by my calculation, you'll be at Bonneville by the time you're 90.
Yeah, good luck with that. You'll be like the world's fastest Indian guy, right?
Yeah, so I said, "I like to buy the body." And, we went back and forth, and he finally, sold it to me, and it was just a shell. Just a shell. I mean, there was no inner pieces to it, no doors cut out, no windows, no hood, nothing, just a shell, and a thin one at that. And it had been sitting out in the California sun for 60 years and started to take its own shape. When I got it back home here, my wife, who supports me in all this craziness in a very big way, literally walked outside and said, "You have absolutely lost it." She saw them. She says, "I don't know if I can support you in this one." Yeah. I said, "Well, we'll think." And then I was talking to Jeff, and he said to me, "Dennis, if you finish the car, if you build the car, you'll never have another car that will be more important than this." And I started digging around. And yeah, it's got some great history. Strother MacMinn was was a professor at the Art Center, and he was very influential for a lot of people that went into racing and the Corvette people who designed Corvettes. Pete Brock was one of his students.
Oh, okay.
And the more I get into this, the more I find out. And then, I got a call through Jeff to bring the car unfinished to Eyes on Design in Michigan that took place at the Henry Ford estate. And they said they would take it any way I could bring it. And it was unfinished, work in progress. And I was fortunate enough by friends that we got it into a charcoal primer and almost black. And it sat at the GM Rotunda. And I was on a symposium with Pete Rock talking about this car and Strother MacMinn, and it was fabulous. Fabulous.
There's a great story, and I'll put a link to it on Hemmings that has a picture of the car, I believe, as you got it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I think the photos were courtesy of Jeff. How would you, this is interesting because you've been around so many cool cars. I mean, I look at this car and it has all sorts of interesting elements. First word that comes to my mind is swoopy. It's just fluid and swoopy and long, but it also has some of these other elements that I see in sections of the car that make me think about other cars. It has kind of almost a cove like the old Corvettes and maybe even Austin Healey's. But it's like something you've never seen. How would you describe to somebody who has never seen one of these, this shape?
Well, I would, in all honesty, Mark, it's really timeless. When this car sat in this rotunda, in the GM Rotunda, and it was with the Corvette C8. There were only two cars in the rotunda for the symposium. Mm-hmm. And I turned to my wife and I said, you know what? The styling of this car, the lines are timeless. Think back in 55, 56, 57, everybody was trying to outdo themselves. And if you picked up a Popular Science or if you picked up some other of the car magazines, everybody had jet engine tubes down the side or down the middle of the car. And this car really is a timeless type of shape to it. And it's incredible. I mean, it could be as much of a concept car today as anything.
It's quite spectacular. So as you stand back and look at this, and your wife looks at you and says, "You're completely nuts, Dennis."
Mm-hmm. It's not the first time she said that.
Yeah, well, maybe not. I've heard that from my wife a few times too. How do you tackle a project like this when you start with basically, as you say, a very thin, sun-drenched shell to bring it back to its former life, its former glory?
Well, it's, I started with a frame. There were four articles in Road and Track about building this car. And what they did was, Road and Track was never really had an intention of building a car for Le Mans, but they kind of threw it out there for their audience and their readers to take on this project. And a couple guys did. But when the body came, I held true to the 48-inch track, 88 to 90-inch wheelbase, and so on, and tried to build the car around that. And there were several ways I could do. Mark, I've never had the kind of money to go to a restoration shop and say, here, take $300,000 or $400,000. Yeah. I had to do a lot of this myself with the help of a lot of my friends. And, we stayed true to that and so on. And it just became little bit by little bit, the body was real thin. We had to turn it upside down and reinforce it in spots. And, we had to straighten pieces out because it started to warp because of the sun out in California or wherever it would have sat. And it was really quite a project, but it started coming along, and it's turned out pretty cool.
And where are you at with this project to date?
We're just about ready to fire it up. The engine's in. The engine was in Michigan. Transmission, all the drive train is in. All the fuel cell. The only thing I really did with this car is because I plan to use it a little bit more than just having it sit around. I upgraded the brakes to proper brakes, and I upgraded the fuel tank as compared to just grabbing a fuel tank from a 55 Chevy or something like that. I put a proper fuel tank in it. So
what's the engine?
The engine is a 283. All right. And that's what it was done back in the day. That's what the engine was. They were running 283, 327s in these cars. And, you know, as I said, I had two ways to go. One way I couldn't afford, and the other way, I was just going to build this like you would build it back in the day, just 60 years later. Do my own welding, make my own frame, take apart from this car, take apart from that car. You know, and when they made these bodies and when they made the Buck, these were guys not with 5-axis machines, you know, Mark. They didn't have the use of clay. It was chicken wire and plaster of Paris and, you know, plaster and body filler. And this is how they made these Bucks back in the day. And, you know, we just decided that we were going to do, I'll tell you a funny story. I had 3 friends I called one night and I said, look, tomorrow I'm putting the engine in, but I don't have the engine mounts made yet. Can you come over and give me a hand? All 3 guys showed up. One guy showed up in a 32 Ford. The other guy showed up in a 59 El Camino.
Nice.
And the other guy showed up in a 53 Chevy convertible. And all 3 guys were wearing T-shirts with cigarettes rolled up in their sleeves and their hair slicked back and said, we're ready to work.
Nice.
So it was cool. It was really cool. I have a picture of it. It's really sharp. It really is. They're fun guys.
You know, I like to ask people about what I call our driving inspirations, people that have been influential, inspiring in their lives. In taking on this project and looking at what MacMinn designed, are you really, or did you go into this whole thing with that inspiration in mind? Like, what was he thinking? What was he doing? Did you try to somewhat get into his mind and headset as an inspiration?
Well, you know, as I said, there were 4 articles in Road and Track, and, you know, they showed different pictures of, you know, designed by Strother MacMinn. And, you know, the car on the cover of Road and Track had gull-wing doors. The design by Strother MacMinn was a suicide door, more that, you know, open and hinged in the back and so on. And I thought, well, you know, if I'm going to cut out the door, I'm going to cut it out as it is in the picture in Road and Track, not in the car that was on the cover of Road and Track, built by Alton Johnson. But so I cut out the door, and obviously it was very flimsy and so on. But then I realized why Alton Johnson made gull-wing doors, because I couldn't get in and I couldn't get out. So, I mean, it was just so. Now I realize, you know, why they did this. And I had to glass all that door back in again and then cut out what I would consider the markings for a gull-wing door and make all that reinforcement underneath there to, you know, to hold everything. And it was, you know, I was working on this thing just to get it to Eyes on Design. I had almost 800 hours in it.
Wow.
And, you know, I was working on it. My wife unfortunately had a car accident, you know, 12 years ago, and she's a little compromised walking. So, you know, I had to make sure she was taken care of. And I was out there at 3:00 in the morning. And one time I said to myself, geez, Alton, how did you do this? You know, I mean, I'm just trying. Then I figured, maybe I better go inside in case this guy shows up.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Well, it's so wonderful that you brought this back to life. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I want to ask you about some of the challenges you faced in recreating this beautiful vehicle. So keep that in mind. We'll be right back.
Okay, perfect.
I've discovered Linkage. It's a new quarterly publication and website that covers the automotive market, driving, restoring, collecting, and discovering your passion for motor vehicles. Linkage is about experiences, opinions, and values. Linkage is an actual informed, reasoned opinion based on first-hand experiences. A talented Linkage team covers the automotive world, the people who share your passion and mine, smart, considered, rational, and experienced opinions, ones you can learn from and grow. That includes our passion that drives auctions and the collector car market. So come with me and join us on this journey. And be sure to use the code CARSYEAH when you subscribe, and they'll give you $10 off. Boom! Linkage, geared for the automotive life. Subscribe today at linkagemag.com. You know what? We are all wired differently, and not everyone needs to go to a 4-year university. Technical education and the skilled trades matter, and one can build a solid career as an auto, diesel, or collision technician. There are no longer blue-collar jobs, they're new-collar careers as the technology and skill sets have become so advanced. Support career and technical education by getting involved with TechForce Foundation. It's a Cars Yeah! charity of choice. Learn more at techforce.org. I like to ask my guests what I call the challenge question. Usually it's about something in their career, their life, but let's stick to this beautiful build. What were some of the challenges you faced? You mentioned one about the doors and realizing, okay, now I see why he did what he did. What were some of the other challenges you faced?
Well, as I said, it was just a shell, so there was nothing really holding the body up. So you had to make all the inner structure to it. You know, you had to make a front engine cowl. You had to, you know, it was just a shell. And interestingly enough, somewhere along the line, you know, you saw the scallops that are on the side of the car, both that follow or flow to the front of the wheel, as well as the ones that go behind the wheel, as you would have in a 57 Corvette type of thing, and the scallop that goes around that. They were missing. Somewhere along the line, somebody said, no, I don't like these. I'm just going to fill these in.
Oh, gosh.
So that whole thing was missing. So I went to a couple guys, friends of mine, and they said, you know, just cut a little triangle on a squeegee and just go around like that and fill it in and so on and so on. That's not going to work. It's just not going to work. And God forbid somebody hits it or rubs up against it, and all of a sudden I got a chunk missing out of this.
Yeah.
You know, so I tell you, Mark, it's amazing what you can find in Home Depot. I'm telling you.
Okay. Now you've intrigued me.
I'm walking through there, and there's fiberglass crown molding that goes in the corner of walls, and it's a triangle, and it's got like a little curve to it, like a little crown to the back of it. And I'm thinking, you know what? This just might work. And I came home and I shaved to a complete triangle. And then the stuff was so flexible, it bent all around. You know, I panel bonded on, and then we, you know, put fiberglass over top of that. And it's as solid as can be. It's just amazing. Just, you know, I was dreading the fact I was putting that off and putting that off and putting it off. And I said, I just got to try to figure this out. And it was just amazing how well it worked out.
When you look at that design element in the car, it beckons me to go back to cars like the old Talbot Lagos and some of the beautiful cars from the 30s and even 40s with these pieces of stainless, or nickel coated, or before they were doing chrome, of beautiful curved pieces of metal. And you think, how on earth did they do that? But they didn't have Home Depot back then. So, you know, it's a different world.
Well, they were really quite craftsmen. You know, I mean, it was just, I mean, what people could do with their hands. As I said before, you know, today is a world of 5-axis machines, you know, and, you know, the old clay guys and the guys that would do it with clay, and you would see pictures of them just, you know, with cheese graters going down and just trying to smooth something out and shaping it and then sanding it down in clay and all that. You know, those, in essence, those days are gone. You know, and consequently, you know, a lot of these cars look the same.
Well, there
what
you
can
go.
I tell you?
Cookie cutter cars. Now, tell me a little bit about the wheels, because I love the wheels on this thing. They have elements of some styling, like road going cars, but also kind of racy looking. Is that a real knockoff hub there?
No, that wheel that is there is actually a hubcap. And what I did, I found through Jeffrey, you know, pictures of this car being built by Alton Johnson. And there are several pictures of this car with those hubcaps on the car back in the day in 1957. And I went and I purchased these hubcaps, and it just, everybody loved them. Everybody has loved them, and it just looks so right for the car. It's incredible. You know, it's really good. It's a nice find, because you can drive yourself nuts trying to match a wheel that might look right for a certain car, and you could go through 3 or 4, 5 different sets before you finally land on one that really works and you're happy with. But this turned out to be pretty good.
You know, the picture you sent me at first, I thought that looked like a Halibran wheel. When you go back and think about the old Halibran racing wheels, the magnesium wheels, and kitty bean designs and all that, but it looks stunning.
Yeah, it turned, and it's stunning on black. You know, on the color, on the charcoal, you know, primer that's basically on that right now, and trying to figure out a color. But,
well, yeah, exactly. I like to ask my guests about what I call our special vehicles in their life. When you look back through all the builds, all the cars you've raced and done, do you look at this vehicle as kind of a culmination of all those skill sets and learning lessons of working in the garage and welding and cutting and fabricating? Is that what this, would you call this a pretty darn special vehicle for your life?
Well, I would, because I don't think, I've built a lot of cars. I've changed a lot of cars. I've taken body pieces that I know already exist and feathered them into something else to create what a division that I wanted. But I never really had one that, okay, we're starting from scratch. We're basically starting from scratch. You got to do your own frame, your own doors, make sure you make patterns for the windows and so on and so forth, the windshield and the rear window, and you got to cut them out. And it's hard to cut something out symmetrically when the body wasn't symmetrical from side to side. And so it's really hard. You got to stand back. Thank God during the winter, I had a friend of mine that had a large body shop, and he let me go in there in a 2-car garage standing over something. It's very hard to do.
Back,
very hard.
Get back to see
you got to step back 15, 20 feet, put something outside, see if it's right, and then try to change it along the way. And this has really been one of the most difficult, but probably one of the most rewarding. I hope other people will get a chance to enjoy it. Maybe we'll take it to some major shows and stuff like that.
Well, I hope so. Yeah, absolutely. That's why you look at manufacturers that do these clay models, so you can see things in real life and stand back, because it's just not the same looking at on a computer screen. It may look really great, but then when you make it life size, it's not quite right sometimes. We've seen plenty of cars that don't look quite right sometimes. So yeah, that was a fortunate thing to have that, buddy.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because there are, designers design, but sometimes practicality's got to play into this. Sometimes their design just doesn't work, and it's. I can only imagine being with a major manufacturer where a designer designs and he puts it out and gives it to the other people, the other teams, and he says, "Hey, make this work." And those guys must be going crazy.
That's why
just trying to. Yeah.
That's why you end up with a Pontiac Aztek.
So true. But that car just might surprise us someday. It's so ugly, it might just come back as something very rare. So
well,
whatever.
Yeah, that's for sure. Sorry, Aztek. I'm sure that was designed by a bunch of people in the kitchen. Throwing salt into the soup.
Not in my lifetime, I can tell you that.
Yeah,
so.
Probably not. So I'm going to be your car psychologist here, Dennis, kind of crawl into your head a little bit here. If you were reincarnated as a vehicle, manifest as a vehicle, not what you want to be, but how you perceive your life around cars, what would you be, but more importantly, why?
You know what? I would come back as a dually pickup truck.
Okay.
And because you can do anything and everything with it. You really can. You can take it to the grocery store. You can tow your trailer with you. You can pick the kids up at school. You can throw stuff out in the back. It's really an all-purpose thing. And I've always had dually pickups for the last 30, 40 years. One time I wanted a van with a dually back to it. And I took my van that I had, which was a diesel van, and cut it in half. I made my own van up.
That's cool.
And I walked into a Ford dealership one day because I needed a relay that I tried 2 or 3 different relays aftermarket, and they just didn't work. So I decided to go into the Ford dealership, buy it right off of a Ford product, and so on. And the sales manager runs out and says, "You're the one." I said, "What? What are you talking about?" He says, "I've had 3 or 4 people coming in here asking where they can buy a half van, half pickup." He says, "Yeah, they think." I said, "We don't make it," and they said, "Oh yeah, you do."
Right.
So
yeah.
Anyway, that was fun. I've always had. That's what I would be. I would really like to be. I love my dually pickup. I really do.
It's funny. Company I used to work with, we had a company truck that was back when Ford, the 350s they were making, I think it was the V10 engine.
Mm-hmm.
And for fun, a friend of mine said, because at the time Ferrari was running the V10 F1 racing engines, he goes, "Oh, you got a Ford Ari." And I kind of looked at him and I went, "Oh, yeah," I laughed. And so we got a Ford Ari personalized license plate. We put Ferrari badging on it, took all the Ford badging off and put Ferrari badging on it. And I had that one weekend, I was using it for something, I forget. And I was at a gas station. This lady said, "I didn't know Ferrari made a truck." And I go, "Yeah, it's a Ford Ari." She goes, "Wow, That's pretty cool. And to this day, I thought she went home and probably told her husband, I saw a Ferrari truck. And he was like, they don't make those. Yeah, I saw one. It was at the gas station. So, yeah, we got a lot of smiles from that with the Ferrari badging. Even had the shields on the side, like the Ferrari cars. So fun stuff. How about
I drove that truck of mine to 500,000 miles.
Oh,
it was just unbelievable.
Wow, that's pretty
just
cool.
Incredible. So.
What fun, having fun in life. So is there a great book that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I truly enjoyed it, and I just read it again. The Unfair Advantage, which gives the history of really Penske and Donahue and so on. It's just incredible. Those were the days back in the Can-Am in the 917s, and it was just
magical times.
It was magical, and the Can-Am series was so innovative, and it was run what you brung, and it was just, these things were bullets. You just 700, 800 horsepower, and then you look at the Porsche that put out 1,200 horsepower.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
I mean, it's just incredible. It's hard to even fathom, how that could be. And when Porsche was doing this 917, they had a telescopic car. They couldn't settle on a wheelbase, so they had a telescopic frame that they used, and they would test it.
Oh, wow.
And it was, and how they would extend the car, they would bring different sized doors. That's what they would do.
Yeah.
And they would extend it right there. And it was just, you think, oh, hell, that's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
But, here you have the engineers. I had a friend of mine that worked at Pratt Miller, and he says, Dennis, we have probably 35 engineers here and 7 CNC machines. And I still go out in the shop and I see guys making cardboard cutouts.
Yeah.
For things. He says it's just amazing to me.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I had Mark's son David Donahue on the show a few months ago, and we talked about that book and his father a little bit and some of the incredible vehicles he strapped himself into. And brave fellow, but Mark Donahue was also an engineer in mind, and could offer that feedback to Penske and others he drove for to make these cars so successful. So,
well, I think that combination of the two were just great. I don't think you could have found a better match between the two of them.
Right? Yeah. Quite amazing. So I'm going to enable you to go on what I call the ultimate drive. I'm going to buy any vehicle in the world. Nice guy that I am. I'm going to park it in your garage and you can take it and drive it anywhere you'd like. But here's the key. You can take somebody with you, even somebody from the past who's no longer with us, which opens up all sorts of opportunities. So what does the ultimate drive look like for you?
Wow. That's a interesting question, Mark.
Wide open checkbook.
Wide open checkbook. Who would I would take on a trip with me? Okay, it's going to be, you mind 3-part?
That's okay.
No, you don't, right?
Yeah, no,
okay.
Whatever you want.
I'm gonna get into a navy blue with a saddle interior, a 64 Ford slab side Cobra.
Okay.
And I'm gonna get up early in the morning. I'm gonna drive down the Coast Highway with my wife. And we're gonna drive for a couple hours, and she's gonna enjoy the sunrise and so on and so forth, and so on. We're gonna stop for breakfast, and then I'm gonna at that restaurant. I'm gonna pick up Dan Gurney. I'm gonna take him
nice.
For the rest of the trip to lunch, and then after that, I'm gonna pick up Pete Brock, and we're gonna finish the day with him.
Nice.
And that would be just a fabulous trip. And I'm going to have dinner at a restaurant for 8 to 10 people, and it's going to be Bruce Canepa and Bill Warner and Bruce Myers and Dan Gurney and Pete Brock, myself, my wife. You can come along, Mark, if you like.
I'd love to be at that dinner table.
Jeff Hacker, and I'll throw in Kevin Jeanette. I don't know if you know Kevin, but he's a kick. He really is a kick.
Wow. That's a very unique answer to that question. You took it into some very fun places that nobody has. So I like your open mind thinking here. Since it's my checkbook, why not, right? I think that's pretty good. But yeah, that would be pretty neat. I've become friends with Pete and Gail Brock, and my wife and I spent a weekend with them a while back, and they took us Saturday morning. They said, hey, you guys want to go to a Cars and Coffee here? They had moved from Seattle here to Henderson, and we both drove. Gail drove one of their Daytona coupes. Pete drove one of them, and I'm thinking, I'm going to a Cars and Coffee in a Daytona Coupe with Peter Brock and his wife, Gail, my wife. I mean, how much better could it get than this?
Oh, yeah.
So, a little bit. I think your drive is even more wild when you add Dad Gurney to the picture. That would be nicely thought through, my friend.
Yeah, just think about Dan Gurney for a second. At one time in Indianapolis, in the 500, 33 cars started. 21 of them were Eagles.
Yeah.
Think about that.
It's amazing.
21 cars out of the 33 were Eagles. Just incredible.
Brilliant driver, but more so designer, engineer, thought provoker, just a wonderful guy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm so glad that he was in all the Racing World's lives. I'm so sad I never got him on the show. I had him scheduled many times and we had to cancel because his health was declining and just never could get him back in his final days. But, his assistant would call and say, he's just not up for it today. But the guy was just working all the time, always thinking, always doing things. So yeah, great legacy for sure. So you've taken us on a marvelous ride today. This car you put together is fantastic. A big shout out, thank you to our mutual friend, Jeff Hacker. For you listeners, if you missed my talk with Jeff, he's been on the show, so you can find him on the Cars Yeah website. Before I let you go, Dennis, could you share some words of inspiration, a mantra, a quote, or something that might inspire those listening today?
Well, I think you have to, if you have a dream, you have to pursue it. You can't, Mark, you can't pick your parents. You can't pick, the date that you're going to be born, but you can sure pick your friends.
Yeah.
And that's so important to me. It really is. And I often thought, Mark, I bought this magazine with this car on the cover when I was 12 years old in a drugstore in Baltimore, Maryland.
Wow.
And I often wondered if the reality of building this car would match the imagination of building it. And I can honestly say it has. So,
well, I can't thank you enough. I mean, it's pioneers like you that bring back dreams like this and have faith in them, and then you add the craziness of Jeff Hacker and his inspiration and drive, and what a great combination. But we can't thank you enough. And again, listeners, I'll put links on Dennis's show notes page on the Cars Yeah website, so you can go. He sent me a great picture of the vehicle that's on his show notes page on the Cars Yeah website. Thank you for doing what you're doing, for bringing back history and exposing it for people that weren't around way back when you and I were a little kid buying those car books. You've done a marvelous job. Until you and I talk again, my friend, I'll see you down the road. Okay. Thanks again. Appreciate it, Mark.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.